was, and tonight I'm here with a special guest. We have Desi Williams, who was Miss Virginia 2013 and Miss Virginia USA 2016. So tonight we're talking about, of course, the pageant world. We have 4 black women right now who are reigning, and we have Miss USA, we have Miss Teen USA, we have Miss Universe, and then we have Miss America, who are all black, and it's really, really exciting. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, why that's significant and what the importance is. So first, Desi, tell me a little bit about your pageant experience and just your whole entry into the pageant world.
I would say I got kind of a late start in pageants in comparison to a lot of people. My very first pageant was my senior year of college, so I was what I would call a late bloomer. And really my first pageant I competed in as kind of a promise to my grandmother. It was my school's homecoming queen pageant, essentially. And that's where I got the bug. That was my first pageant. I had a lady on campus sort of beg me over and over and over again, please do another one, please do another one. And I put her off for a solid year, finally gave it a shot, competed in my first local pageant. I won that pageant, which took me to Miss Virginia, which is a preliminary pageant to Miss America. My first year, I was first runner-up. Second year, I went back and won. After that, I figured why not try Miss USA as well. So kind of the same story. I went to Miss Virginia USA, first year, got first runner-up. Second year, went back and won, and then that took me to the Miss USA pageant in 2016. So I had a brief but fairly successful run in pageants.
Yeah. So what a lot of people don't know is that it's a lot of work. Like, you don't just show up and just become a queen. Like, it's a lot of work. Tell us a little bit about the work that goes into it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started really competing in pageants, I was actually in graduate school at the time. So I like to call my mom like the anti-pageant mom, because she's not one of those moms backstage who's like, you got this, girl, or who's talking me into doing it. I literally called her and told her I was competing, and she was like, are you sure that's something you want to do? You're in grad school. That's really important. I want you to focus on your studies and graduate. So it was a struggle. I was going to school full time. Then after school, I was going to a job. And then after my job, I was going to prepare for pageants. And so we've got, obviously, there's a lot of working out. You got to get on stage in a swimsuit, which isn't easy for anyone. A lot of dieting. But then there's also what most people at home don't see, the interview component. So studying current events, watching the news, doing mock interviews with people just to make sure that you're ready all around for the competition. It was pretty time consuming. My professors still joke to this day because I would sleep in class most days in graduate school. I read my books at night.
Okay, we all did.
Right. I finished, I got a doctorate degree, it's fine, I'm employed. But I slept a lot in class because I was exhausted. It was a lot of work.
And so also what a lot of people don't know is that, like you just said, there are all of these preliminary pageants. So when you end up at Miss Universe, you don't just end up at Miss Universe. You've likely gone through pageants and pageants and pageants to get to that point.
Right.
Which is it can be years. Like you said, you were first runner-up and then you came back. So the fact that we have 4 black women who have gone through all of this and made it to the top is super significant. How do you feel about that?
It's pretty exceptional. I mean, it's amazing, and this is history making. I hate to say that it will probably never happen again, but it's just reality. This will probably never happen again. We were all shocked when Miss America won, and then we had Miss Teen USA win, and she had a black girl rocking natural hair, and then after that, Miss USA won, and Miss USA just crowned 2 black girls 2 years ago and then 3 years ago. So in our head, in the world of pageants, we're thinking there's not a chance in hell that another black girl's going to win. But here we see it happening over and over again, and then Miss Universe. So it's super exciting for all brown girls who have competed in pageants, who've had to overcome so many different stereotypes of what the perception of beauty is to the pageant world, that we're all overjoyed.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of those stereotypes before we kind of get into, if we think that the playing field is finally leveling or maybe level. I have my opinions on that too. But let's talk about some of the stereotypes and some of the things that you kind of have to go through as a black girl, in pageantry.
Yeah. I get asked a lot of times from black girls who are interested in competing in a state level pageant, like, do you have any advice? Can you give me anything? And really the advice that I always give them is you have to be exceptional in every round of competition. It's not like the white girl next to you who's got blonde hair and blue eyes and just the world has always seen her as beautiful. You've got to prove in every single round of competition that undeniably you're the winner. And I don't say that to discourage them, but it's been my reality. I competed in Virginia, I won in Virginia, and Virginia isn't the most progressive state. And so I can remember winning Miss Virginia, going to breakfast a couple days after my win. I was with some of the board members, and an elderly white man came up to me, and he put his hand on my shoulder. And it's funny because people think these are compliments, but he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Honey, it's okay that you don't look like the other girls who have won before you. We're still happy that you won."
So basically, like, you're pretty for a black girl comment.
It's the same thing.
I can't take that.
Our whole lives, right?
Yeah.
You're pretty for a black girl. You're not what I wanted to win, but I'm okay with you winning. Sort of that thing.
Like, you're the black girl I can tolerate. So it's nice that if a black girl had to win, you won, which is, again, you said the story of our lives. It's really annoying, guys. Don't tell black girls that they're pretty for black girls. Don't do it. Thank you.
I know. Hopefully the world knows that by now, but
they don't.
It's shocking. It's shocking that they don't.
Well, they don't. That's why we're still surprised and honored and excited when so many, black girls are kind of reigning, because it's something that the world doesn't know yet, that we are, beautiful and just still ordinary people and just as talented and just as everything as everybody else. Not every single one of us is the same talented as everybody else, but that's all races all together. So it's just, it's crazy. But yeah. So of course, in Jamaica, so I competed in pageants too, not to the level that you did, like not to the level of like fantasticness. But what's interesting at home, and what we had a lot, is that there's also some colorism in there. If a black girl won in Jamaica and she was super dark, they'd be like, oh, well, she's not pageant standard. She's never going to compete on the international stage. And if she was white or light-skinned, which happens in Jamaica too, obviously, we have our motto in Jamaica is out of many one people. So it's a lot of, diversity. They would say, oh, that's not representative of the whole country. And we're like, but she's Jamaican.
Right, we can't win.
Exactly. So there was just no way for us to win. But then also, if a light-skinned girl won that was still black, everybody would be like, okay, well, here you got your black girl, but she's not too black. She's international standard. And everyone would be like, well, why did it have to be a light-skinned girl? Did you feel like there was that kind of colorism and all of that in the pageant world when you were in it as well?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Even reflecting on the women, there are very few women of color who have won in Virginia. It's historically they crown blonde hair, blue-eyed girls year after year. So historically, it's not a very diverse pageant. But even in reflecting in the women of color who won before me, none of them that I can recall, none of them are brown skin. They're all light skin. Maybe don't have curly hair. They might have kinky hair, but they are light skinned and they are able to conform to society's norm of what is considered beautiful. And it's shocking that we're still talking about this in 2019, but even in my daily life as a physical therapist, 2 weeks ago, a patient told me, oh, wow, you're a really well-groomed young lady.
Oh, I get it all the time.
Right, and I'm 30 years old, so why wouldn't I be well-groomed?
People actually compliment my English too, and I'm like, my country's first language, so, surprise, I know how to speak English all the time. They just have all of these assumptions and stereotypes. And I think one of the big assumptions that people have, or one of the big conversations that we're having right now, especially with our newly crowned Miss Universe, is natural hair.
Yeah.
Which has been kind of I wouldn't say in talks, but kind of the subject of attention for, I would say, a couple years now in the spotlight. To you, is that something that can make or break you in a pageant?
It felt like it was something that could make or break me. When I was competing, there wasn't a chance I was going to compete with my natural hair, because I didn't feel like it was accepted. And in Virginia, truthfully, it wouldn't not have been. So sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get through your state pageant to make it to the national or the international level. But I want to take a step back, because while it's shocking for us, if we think about the history of South Africa in particular, apartheid just happened in 1994, I think, is when apartheid was finished. So black people in South Africa literally were not even considered as equals in society through the lens of the law until 1994. So while it's
25 years ago,
well, it's shocking to us. It's like, this is a radical thing for South Africans, and South African women in particular, who, like, my whole life I felt like I wasn't up to the standard of beauty. But if you could imagine a country where you grew up literally being less than a citizen, and now you've got a woman who looks like you, who's representing the universe. Like, think of how
crazy,
mind-blowing that is. So it's...
And then she has 3 other, pageant sisters, if you will, that you can look at and say, wow, there's technically one of every shade in there. There's, you want a light-skinned black girl, you got one. You want a medium-skinned black girl, dark-skinned black girl, you kind of got everything in these 4, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's really refreshing. And it's refreshing also because if you watch these pageant queens, they go back and forth, with the exception of South Africa. She's got short, natural, 4C, kinky hair. But the rest of them sort of go back and forth between their straight hair and their curly hair, which I think is a good lesson for Americans who maybe have not been exposed to black girls, because I know I have friends and I know I have had people who come up and want to touch your hair, especially when you're wearing it curly. They're just like intrigued by the fact that there are curls, and so it's nice to see them embracing that and really serving as a point of education for the rest of society that, like, hey, yeah, this is black girl magic. We can wear our hair curly one day, the next day straight, and switch it up and be curly the next, and tomorrow might have a wig on.
And that we like to do that. That's another thing too, is that, like, a lot of people wonder, like, you know, why do they change their hair every single day? Well, because we can.
Right.
And 2, it's cute. And 2.
Right.
A, we can. B, it's cute.
Right.
And C, why not? But
Why not?
It's so strange to some people because they don't tend to kind of have those hairstyles. But I like the fact that Miss Universe specifically mentioned that, hey, that this stops today, that someone that looks like you is on the TV now and is here.
Yeah.
Do you think that in today's pageantry, especially with our recent, I will call it success, that, you know, the playing field is leveling out, or it's getting to a point where, you know, we don't have to say, oh, a black girl won, because it's not weird anymore, you know?
That's a tough question. I don't believe the playing field has been leveled. And I also don't think we should stop celebrating it, because I'm sure you've had similar experience. But literally, when I tell other pageant girls I've competed with that I didn't grow up believing I was beautiful, they think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
But it's true. It's true. I was never told by someone outside of my immediate family until I went to a historically black college for university, for college. I was never told that I was beautiful by someone outside of my family without there being a caveat. You're beautiful for a black girl.
For a black girl, exactly.
You're pretty for a black girl. So it's important for us to continue to celebrate that, because there are children who are still growing up in these segregated communities where they're not being told that, and they're still being looked at as an outsider. They're still being looked at as different, and they're not viewing themselves as beautiful.
Yeah.
So we can say all day there's a black Miss Universe and pretend like the playing field is level, the same way that we had a black president and people wanted to pretend like racism wasn't a thing anymore, when clearly it's like at an all-time high.
Exactly.
Right. So just because some people are progressive enough to see beauty in these beautiful women that they are, doesn't mean everybody is. So the playing field is not level. It's certainly a step in the right direction.
Right.
It gives me hope for the future and can give all young girls hope for the future. But to say the playing field is level and for people to squash it as if it's not significant, I think it would be doing a disservice to the women who have fought the hard fight, because I'm sure the new Miss Universe was not told all her life she was beautiful.
I'm sure she wasn't.
She
the
was
fact
set
that she
on
had to
stage.
acknowledge it
Yeah.
and say, you know, like, hey, I look like you today, is just, I even remember I went to boarding schools. I went to predominantly white boarding school. I think in my graduating class, there were 3 black girls, if I recall, 3 of us. And so when I went, you know, and worse, I was coming from Jamaica, where we don't necessarily, I wouldn't say we have a racism problem, but we definitely 100% have a colorism problem.
Right.
And yeah, I wouldn't even say luckily, because it's not a lucky thing at all, but I never really had to deal with the downside of colorism, because I'm not light skinned, but I'm not dark either. So I never really felt that. When I got to boarding school, it was kind of like, okay, wait, I don't look like any of these girls, and now I kind of want to, and what am I supposed to do? And I feel like if at that time, especially because I was interested in pageants at that point, if I had seen, okay, well, hey, Miss Universe looks like this, and she has this type of hair, and she is actually like, okay, cool, like this, I can model myself off of that, instead of modeling myself off of the other white girls who are at school who, like, obviously I can't look like that.
You'll
There's
never
no way.
look like that. Yeah.
Like, no matter how hard I try, I could straighten my hair all I want. I actually prefer to wear my hair straight, just because I like how I look, just like I don't like certain types of lip colors or whatever. That's just how I prefer my look, not necessarily because of a white standard of beauty. I've always just been that way. But I did try to do different things to look like them, and I was like, okay, I can't do this. So it would have been nice to have the representation.
Right.
Did you feel like after you kind of came out of the pageant world that you kind of maintained some of that, you know, kind of, I have to kind of look like everybody else, or, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I still have those, like today, I didn't do my hair. I was like, oh, I'll just pull it back in a bun because I don't have, like, I'm tired. I've been working all day. But there was a point in time, especially in the immediate years following pageants, that I never would have been on camera without a full face of makeup, my hair straightened, maybe clipping in some extensions to make my hair appear longer than it was. Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely, because people had always seen me a certain way. And I was fearful that, again, I'd only been told that I was beautiful looking like that, conforming to what is the white standard of beauty. So for a while, I did confine myself to that. Luckily, I'm in a space now, and I went to a Black college, and I've got friends who embrace me the way I am, that I no longer have to feel that way.
So there is an interesting component of Miss Universe. There are actually two interesting components I want to talk about. One is the swimwear section. So I think Miss World actually cut out the swimwear part. So they no longer have, women in bikinis, but...
Actually, Miss America.
And Miss America, I didn't even know they did too. So, but Miss Universe still has it. And of course, most Black women are shaped a little bit differently. We usually have more hips, sometimes more boobs. Not everybody, of course, come in all shapes and sizes. But do you feel like that was a component too that, kind of was like we're, I'm shaped differently. I have more hips. Like these girls are like real thin,
I would say yes and no. And I support the swimsuit portion of competition. I think it's a great demonstration of confidence in a woman. I think it's a great demonstration of a woman who takes care of their body. What I don't support is a swimsuit winner who's just stick thin.
Right.
So the title of swimsuit has always been lifestyle and fitness in swimsuit. So the purpose is to demonstrate that you live a healthy lifestyle. And so I think our Miss USA is a perfect example of a woman who's not stick thin, but very clearly takes time to work out. She's got like one of the best six packs I've ever seen.
I was like, oh girl. I was like,
right.
Just send that over here.
But she isn't a stick. She's got some curves. I wouldn't, call her curvy by any means, but she's muscular. You can tell that she emphasizes her fitness. And I think that's an ideal way to look in swimsuit. That's an ideal way to judge swimsuit, as someone who you can tell cares about their body, doesn't have to be stick thin, doesn't have to be perfect. There's actually a Miss Universe a couple of years ago from the Philippines, Pia, I don't know if you remember her, but she was maybe a more busty woman, a more curvy woman than would typically win Miss Universe, and she had a hot body, and people loved her. And people still love her because of that. So she was thin, but she wasn't stick thin. You could tell that she wasn't missing meals, so to speak.
Gotcha. So this is an interesting one. So this is again coming out of Miss Universe, but on the Jamaican side. So of course we have the national costume. That's the other component, which a lot of people don't usually take a lot of notice of.
Yeah.
So our Miss Jamaica came out in a costume that was representing Annie Palmer. So for most people who don't know what that is, Annie Palmer is they call her the White Witch of Rose Hall.
Okay.
It's a tourist attraction in Jamaica. She was a slave owner that practiced witchcraft of some kind and was kind of notorious for murdering her slaves, and I think her husbands too. I haven't been in there since I was like 12 because I'm terrified.
Right.
I haven't been in there for a long time, but she's famous for that. And the costume that Miss Jamaica wore this year was kind of representing the legend of Annie Palmer.
Okay.
So she basically came out dressed as...
You fixed my face, yeah.
That's what I said. She came out as just like a reincarnation of a like white ghost. I don't know. I don't even know a better way to describe it. So there was a lot of uproar about that. The pageant directors came out and said, no, that's not what we were doing. It's a big part of our cultural heritage. And it's an attraction in Jamaica and, all of these different things. But like, I just couldn't, I'm sorry, I don't get it. I can't support that. And I can't imagine, like, if there was more than one person who contemplated this idea, there was nobody who vetoed it. Nobody was smart enough to be like, somebody might be offended by this. That's what I wondered. I was like, that whole table of people thought that was a great idea.
Yeah.
But then also, what I don't support is that people were attacking her as an individual, of course, because this is 2019. We have the internet, people can hide, and they were attacking her specifically. Do you feel like you as a pageant person, like if you were the one that was kind of behind, the costume, would you have been able to stand up and say, I am not wearing this, you people are crazy, find me another costume? Because I don't feel like it's that black and white.
It's absolutely not that black and white. And that's something that was hard for me, especially being a newbie to pageant and going to Miss America. I tell people this all the time. The biggest reason I went back to Miss USA is because I felt like at Miss America I wasn't representing who I was. Mm-hmm. I was so green to pageants, I didn't know what I was doing. So any bit of information or a bit of advice that somebody gave me, I just took it and I ran with it. So say this in an interview, all right, I'll say that. Wear this dress, okay, I'll wear it. So I will say there's a certain level of wanting to please all the people that are helping you, right? Because these girls aren't necessarily paying for wardrobe out of pocket. They have sponsors. They've got people who are paying for things. So in some regard,
you want to keep your job in a way too. It's like, okay, like I want to be here.
Right, yeah.
You want to go to Miss Universe.
Exactly. So it's a job. So you have to fulfill the job duties. So it isn't as black and white. It's hard. obviously that nobody knows who to attack but her. She's the visible person.
Right.
Nobody else even knows who's in the background. And in that regard, though, when you get to like racial issues, maybe you can put your foot down.
Like,
but I will
it's
say
not a
the
good
girls
idea.
don't have complete autonomy over what you wear or what you say. When I went back to Miss USA, I did, and I had a lot of issues with my pageant director because of it. But I decided I wanted to be who I was, 110%.
Authentic.
Yeah, I wanted to be authentic, and I didn't want to have any regrets. But I will say it's hard as a contestant who's trying to please everyone to necessarily have the final say.
All right. So to wrap up, and I want you to specifically address this advice as at Black girls. So yes, pageant kind of perspectives in general, but Black girls, what is your advice to them? What is your advice as we go into this kind of 2020, where we have 4 reigning queens, where we want to make this an equal playing field, where we realize that this is not, we're not there yet. What would your advice be?
Oh gosh, there's so many layers to this. So one is to use this as an opportunity to educate people, but don't get defensive. It's really easy for us to have someone who's not in support of us promoting other Black women, and we get defensive as opposed to using it as a point for education. So that would be the first thing. The second thing I tell any woman competing in a pageant is you have to realize that the winner is the minority. So your odds of winning are very small.
Yeah.
Your odds of not winning are much larger. So anytime you enter a pageant, for me it was important to have a personal goal in mind. So in this pageant, I want to ensure that people know I'm dedicated to my profession, or I want people to know that I'm dedicated to myself, or know that I'm authentic. You have to have a personal goal because the chances of you winning are pretty slim. And lastly, I think these current queens have shown us time and time again to just be you. Don't feel like you need to conform to anybody's standard of beauty, because in the end, and I struggled with this post-pageant, you're always going to feel like you have to conform to that standard of beauty.
Right.
And that is not a realistic way to live. So be you 110%.
All right, so where can we find you?
So you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Desi J. Williams.
All
So
right.
it's the same on all platforms.
All right, awesome. You're one of the lucky ones that got all of the names. All right, guys, we have just spoken to Desi about all the Black girl magic happening in pageants. And of course, I'm Ray, and you've just been buzzed.